What if some of the most iconic songs of the 1960s were hiding a secret in plain sight? A fake name printed right there in the credits. Today, I'm breaking that open in 10 songs from the 60s released under secret pseudonyms to escape contracts. Real stories where exclusive deals, label wars, and backstage power plays got so tight that artists and writers had to disguise themselves just to release a track, produce it, play on it, or even sign their own work without triggering legal trouble. Back then, exclusive wasn't a vibe, it was a rule. And sometimes the session happened, the record got finished, but the real name couldn't appear anywhere. That's when quiet aliases showed up, carefully placed on paper to avoid penalties, shutdowns, or lawsuits. If you like fast, rarely told music mysteries, hit like, subscribe, and comment at the end with the disguise that caught you off guard the most. Now let's start this the right way, because the first case looks harmless until you read the fine print. Number 10. Fever, Elvis Presley, 1960.
When you put your arms around me, I get a
We're starting with a disguise most people miss because it hides in the least flashy place, the songwriting credit. When Elvis recorded Fever, one of the names tied to the composition was John Davenport. It reads like a normal, forgettable credit until you learn it was a pseudonym used by Otis Blackwell for contractual reasons. In plain terms, the song can move, get recorded, and spread, but the real name can't sit in the storefront without risking a collision with earlier business commitments. That's the purest version of the trick. You don't change the song, you change the signature. And it raises a quiet question that hits harder the more you think about it. How many classic tracks do you know where the real mystery isn't in the melody, but in the fine print? Because if a songwriter had to hide just to keep working, the next story shows what happens when the pressure lands on the star himself.
That is something you all know.
Number 9. Out of Sight, James Brown, 1964. James Brown in the 1960s wasn't just an artist, he was an engine. Relentless schedule, relentless output, relentless ambition. And that kind of momentum can collide with the most dangerous part of the business, contract conflict, with labels fighting over control. On Out of Sight, there's a detail that looks small but changes the story. Songwriting tied to the pseudonym Ted Wright. The move is straightforward and risky at the same time. Put a different name on the paper so you don't trigger the wrong alarm at the wrong moment. What makes it even tenser is the era. When the industry thinks you're slipping past boundaries, the response isn't a scolding, it's legal pressure. And tricks like this are exactly why credits became a chessboard. Every line, every name, every choice could become ammunition in a behind-the-scenes fight. But here's the thing, this wasn't a one-time stunt. The next track makes that impossible to ignore. Number 8. Maybe the Last Time, James Brown, 1964. If Out of Sight felt like a bold move, Maybe the Last Time makes it clear the pseudonym wasn't decoration, it was equipment. Once again, Ted Wright appears tied to the credits, and that repetition tells you what this period looked like. James Brown creating and releasing at full speed while the contract side tightened the leash. And when you live inside that kind of pressure, the studio becomes more than music, it becomes strategy. The audience hears the groove, feels the punch, and moves on. But behind the curtain, the question was different. How do I put out what I want without triggering a shutdown? In a lot of cases, the answer wasn't silence, it was an alternate name. Quiet, almost invisible, that kept the machine moving. And now that you've seen how this worked in soul and R&B, get ready for the British rock world, where even a Beatle had to become a ghost just to show up on a record. Number 7. I'm the Urban Spaceman, Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, 1968. This is where the story changes color. Instead of pure tension, You get a disguise that sounds like a joke, but sits on a real reason. I'm the Urban Spaceman lists its producer as Apollo C. Vermoose, a pseudonym tied to Paul McCartney. And the key detail is this: in certain situations, putting Paul McCartney on a credit wasn't just a fun cameo. It could mean complications, contract headaches, label politics, too much attention, too many questions. So the trick becomes clean. The work gets done, the track gets its polish, and the name on the label stays safe. It also fits the era perfectly. Genius and chaos living in the same studio, in the same week, sometimes in the same hour. And what's wild is that for a long time, plenty of people heard the song without connecting the dots. But McCartney didn't stop at being a hidden producer. The next case goes deeper. He's inside the recording itself, and once again, he doesn't sign as himself. Number 6. My Dark Hour, Steve Miller Band, 1969. My Dark Hour is one of those studio moments that feels like a movie, except the biggest twist is right there in the credit. Paul McCartney appears as Paul Ramone. He's not just nearby, he's playing, singing, and showing up in a very real way, under a different name. And when McCartney has talked about why he used certain aliases, he described it as being tied to worries about contractual matters. Meaning, it wasn't only humor, it was caution. This kind of camouflaged participation exposes a quiet rule of the era. Talent moved around, friendships existed, sessions happened, but contracts decided who was allowed to officially exist on a given record. So a pseudonym becomes a pass. You're there, but you're not there. And once you notice that pattern, it's hard to unsee how common the game was, especially around the Beatles' orbit. Because the next entry has one of the most famous, most dramatic disguises of all, an alias printed on a record by a rock supergroup. Number 5. Badge, Cream, 1969. Badge is remembered as a meeting of giants, but the secret lives in the fine print. George Harrison is credited as L'Angelo Misterioso, a pseudonym used because of contractual restrictions. And once you know that, the song changes shape. You're not just hearing Cream, you're hearing a Beatle, officially hidden on the paperwork. It shows the strangest contradiction of the era. The scene was collaborative. Everyone knew each other, traded ideas, dropped by studios, but the business side was rigid. So when a guest appearance could spark friction, the real name stepped off stage and a character walked in. And Angelo Misterioso isn't a random alias. It's deliberately mysterious, almost like a wink to anyone paying attention. But here's what many people miss. That pseudonym didn't stay attached to one track. Harrison reused it, and the next song makes that crystal clear. Number 4. Never Tell Your Mother She's Out of Tune, Jack Bruce, 1969. When a pseudonym shows up a second time, it stops being a coincidence and becomes a pattern. On Jack Bruce's Never Tell Your Mother She's Out of Tune, George Harrison appears again tied to L'Angelo Misterioso, once more for contractual reasons. And that's fascinating because it proves how the industry didn't just limit people, it also forced them to invent shortcuts. Can't sign your name? Fine, sign as someone else. That repetition reveals another layer too. 1960s rock was a web. Bands overlapped, musicians admired each other, the urge to jump onto a friend's record was real, but turning that into an official credit could create a headache no one wanted, so the music stayed free and the name got locked behind a mask. And now that you've seen how one person had to disappear on paper, the next part is even stranger, because the pseudonym doesn't cover a single musician, it covers an entire hit-making machine at the center of a contract war. Number 3. While You're Out Looking for Sugar, The Honeycomb, 1969. If there's a single ghost name that captures behind-the-scenes warfare, it's Edith Wayne. On While You're Out Looking for Sugar, the songwriting credit carries that pseudonym, used by Holland Dozier Holland for contractual reasons after leaving Motown and getting pulled into the lawsuit chaos that followed. Instead of signing as themselves, they had to camouflage their identity to keep working and keep releasing music. The result is almost ironic. One of the most influential teams behind the 1960s sound was right there, hidden behind a name that looks like an ordinary person, and the public had no reason to suspect anything. You bought the single, enjoyed the record, moved on. But the credit was the clue. And now it reads like a note left for the future. We were here, we just couldn't say it out loud. And the hook is this: that pseudonym doesn't show up once, it spreads. And where it pops up next makes the whole game even clearer. Number 2, Crumbs Off the Table, The Glass House, 1969. Here's the proof that Edith Wayne became a real shield. Crumbs Off the Table carries the same pseudonym in its credits, so this wasn't a one-off trick, it was a survival system. When the real names couldn't appear because of contract restrictions and legal conflict, the alias became the channel the music could escape through. And that changes the way you listen. You realize the signature on the label doesn't tell the whole story. In 1969, while the public just wanted the next hit, there were creators trying to keep careers and income alive inside a legal maze. Edith Wayne was the hidden hallway through that maze. But there's a strange side effect. When a pseudonym shows up again and again, it starts to feel like a real identity of its own. And that's exactly where our number 1 lands, because it shows that fake name reaching close to the peak of its power. Number 1, Girls, It Ain't Easy, The Honeycomb, 1969. To close the list, Girls, It Ain't Easy works like a perfect snapshot of disguise at full strength. Once again, the credit points to Edith Wayne. And when you connect the dots, the impact is obvious. A contract dispute big enough to stop one of the most legendary teams in music from using their own names, but not big enough to stop the music itself. This is the mysterious side of the 1960s that doesn't get talked about as much. The decade feels like freedom, creativity, cultural revolution, and it was. But at the same time, there was a colder machine underneath. Contracts, publishing control, and corporate leverage. The smartest artists didn't just fight it head-on, they learned to route around it without vanishing completely. In this story, the pseudonym isn't just a mask, it's a passage. So the next time someone tells you, credits don't matter, remember this: sometimes the credit is the most honest part of the whole saga because it shows exactly where the truth was forced to hide. And before we wrap, let's tie together what these 10 cases reveal about the music business, then and now. If you zoom out, these 10 stories fall into 3 patterns: a writer who couldn't sign, a star who couldn't officially appear, and an entire hit-making team that had to become a ghost name to survive contract pressure and legal conflict. And the most unsettling, meaning the most surprising, part is how normal this became. The public bought the music, the industry bought the silence. Which leaves a question that sticks. How many historic collaborations are still hiding inside credits no one reads? How many ordinary names on old labels are actually secret doors into massive stories? If any of these caught you off guard, do 2 quick things. Hit like so I know you want more music mysteries like this, and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive into the behind-the-scenes stories most people never hear. And now I want your answer in the comments. What pseudonym was the most unexpected? In which song are you replaying just to stare at the credits with new eyes?